Gear Raid 2 Stage 13. That is the focus of this video. So first thing to talk about is the map itself. I've gone over quite a lot of stuff in the previous video, the general Gear Raid 2 guide, so we'll be very specific in this video. This is the stage. It is the first stage to introduce the Sandstorm, which does around 12 to 13% max HP every 3 seconds. So it is quite heavy. It hits everyone, so you need to heal everyone no matter whether they're platform heroes or fighters and defenders on the ground. Stage 13 also swaps using the Pharaoh's Guards instead of using the Golden Guard. The Pharaoh's Guard move from the top down to here. They're a bit slower than the Golden Guard, which means you can use cost generating heroes much more effectively in this stage. You have a bit more time. Aside from that, everything is pretty much the same as the previous stages. It's just very strong Pharaoh's Guards to deal with, and mainly the ambient damage from the Sandstorm. So when it comes to deciding your team, there are a number of very important distinctions and decisions to make. The reason I like to take Narvi is you start with 20 cost points, she costs 10, and there is quite a bit of a delay until these enemies, the Pharaoh's Guards, actually arrive in your lane. So you have plenty of time for her to actually give you some cost back to get her ultimate up, and at this point already she's generated a decent bonus on top of what her cost is. So if you despawn her now, you're still up around 7 cost, I believe, but you can keep her alive a bit longer. You don't need to throw a healer on her, you can just keep her like this, and when she gets near death you can despawn her so that you don't lose 5 cost points. So now as mine is about to die, I can despawn her, get 5 back, and now when I'm heading into the boss's Earthshake, as you can see it started channeling, I have 30 cost points and 3 heroes placed. Whereas now the boss has spawned and I have 21 cost points and 3 heroes placed. So it's not a massive difference, it's 9 cost extra by the time the first Earthshake arrives, assuming you place her, get I think 2 or 3 procs from her passive, use her ult and despawn her just before she dies. So it's 9 extra cost, it's not crazy but it does help. And she only costs 10 as well, so you can use her in other ways as to temporarily block waves. With that said, if you're not having any issues with cost points, you're able to get everyone up when you need. You don't necessarily have to bring a Narvi or a cost generator like Dallin, but I tend to do it because I won't be using a lot of my slots anyway. So anyway, that's the easy part to decide upon, just whether you need the cost generator or not. I bring them just because you have 10 slots, you can only place 8 heroes. So the harder part is the healers and the defenders. We went over all of the heroes in the previous video, so I won't do that here. But in general, you're going to need 2 defenders and 2 healers at least, though 3 healers would actually be ideal, especially under certain situations. So first off, we'll talk about the defenders. There are 2 lanes you will need to defend on the left and right. We won't go into every single defender again, but generally you will need 2 pretty good defenders. If you do have Isolde, I would recommend Isolde, as she can ultimate to provide damage reduction to surrounding allies and herself, and additionally she will shield every 30 seconds the allies to her left and her right, which will help quite a lot. Though if you're unlucky and you haven't pulled many defenders and you haven't been able to fuse Isolde, then you can fuse Livian much more reasonably, and her ultimate grants her some really good damage reduction permanently when it is activated the first time. So I think she's a great attainable option. Besides that, you don't have to use defenders on both sides. Say you've pulled a Salazar or an Abomination, or fused the Abomination. If they are 6-starred and in reasonable gear, on this stage they can perform fairly well. You are dealing with the Pharaoh's Guards. They are not the Golden Guard, so they're not going to be completely annihilating your heroes. And I'll put down my 6-star Salazar just to show you what I mean. So you can see Salazar here is tanking, but because he's also very strong, he can absolutely eviscerate the enemies, which is really nice. If these were rolling boulders, he would be taking massive damage. So we'll do stage 12 with Power of Dominance off. The exact same thing again, just to show you how much damage Salazar would take were he to be hit by a rolling boulder. So bear in mind, when he was getting hit by the Pharaoh's Guards, it wasn't a lot, but you can see the rolling boulder does massive damage to him. It's like 80% of his HP, and he'll die in the second one. And the punch from the first one would have actually killed him as well if he hadn't killed it so fast. So you can get away with fighters much easier on the stages with Pharaoh's Guards and not the Golden Guards. So back to stage 13. When defending these 2 lanes, using a fighter will work fine, but I would recommend a very strong one. And you can even use Wrath as well, as Wrath does have really good damage. So I would actually advise using fighters where possible, as they do have a really good damage output, which can help a lot. So then, for this example, we have 2 defenders we can use, and we have a Wrath to use as DPS, as everyone gets him on the day 14 login. Though again, this will not really work super well unless your fighter is 6-star, but they are DPS, so it is worth taking them to 6-star anyway. So then that leaves us with perhaps the most important part of this run, which is the healers. I wanted to make this example video using 5-star healers, or healers that didn't have awakenings. Unfortunately, all I had is an Asande with 4 awakenings and a Lightlock spare. So I built the Lightlock to 5-star, so I have that, and I have this Asande, but they are not ideal healers. The healers you really want for these stages are these two, which are the ones that I use, which are Midan and Vortex. They are both HP scaling. Vortex has an incredible range, and Midan is not only actually a really good range for this stage, but she also heals 3 people at a time. She is a tri-healer. My healers are, of course, in pretty good gear, so this is just to show you the placement of how I would use these 2 healers if you do have them. My preference is to place Midan straight in the middle and face her left. The reason for this is I can then place someone on this left tile here, such as a Nisande, and Nisande will cover all of the middle as well. That means they're healing each other as well as all of the adjacent tiles, so everything is completely covered. Or if I have a Vortex, I could do the same. But for Vortex, I would normally just place him behind, as it gives me everywhere to work with. So this is my ideal placement for my healers. But then, of course, you need a DPS. So normally your DPS would be at the front facing forward, so you can get your damage out as early as possible on the enemies. Mary is not a DPS, I just didn't bring one in this run. Additionally, if you're having trouble surviving these earth shakes, then you can place a healer on the left side, and they will be getting healed by both of your other healers. So as long as the healer you're placing as your 3rd healer is providing more than they're costing the team, as in they're going to be requiring healing, so they need to at least be out healing the damage that they're taking. So I would not take a 4-star or incredibly badly built healer. You definitely want to take someone who can at least pull their own weight. The additional benefits of putting a healer over here, or just even a mage like Mary or Iona over here, is that they'll be soaking these boulder throws, so they're kind of a sacrifice to put out so that they can eat the aggro and take the damage on behalf of the rest of your team. So what if you don't have Midan and Vortex? Well, ideally you have at least one of them, or you have a legendary such as Eloin would be incredible, or Leia even would be great. Ezrin as well should be pretty useful. Ideally you would have at least one of these 2 epic healers, or one of the legendary ones. If you were to have Sadie or Eloin, they would make it significantly easier. Eloin and Leia would be placed exactly the same way that I placed Midan, which is in the middle facing left. I mean, all right would work fine. Sadie as well would be placed in the middle so she can span across the lanes, so she can heal these extra tiles if you do want to put someone there to soak damage. But if you are unfortunate enough that you don't have any legendary healers and you are missing Midan and Vortex, that is really tough. There's not a lot you can do without good healers on this stage onwards. So ideally, either you have one of the legendaries or you have at least one of these 2 healers, Vortex or Midan. Again, if you have Midan, face her one of these 2 ways to cover as much as you can. And if you don't have a Midan, you can place a Vortex facing forward instead. And then from here, you just need to supplement the Vortex as much as you can with additional healers. So a Nisande facing down so that Nisande is covering the Vortex as well. You want to make sure all of your healers are overlapping. And then say your healers are struggling during this Earthshake and you are using an Isolde, you can ult with Isolde and it will cover all of the adjacent tiles, protecting your healers a bit, giving them a bit more damage reduction. And then if you need to provide additional healing, you can place a 3rd healer like Lightlock over here. He's not covered by Nisande, but that's okay. Nisande is going to have her hands full dealing with all of these allies here. So now we have a core 4 in the middle. We can place down a Mary or a DPS in the middle if we want. We do have to be mindful that as the last placed platform hero, Lightlock is going to be taking a lot of damage on the left over here. But that's okay. We want our best 2 healers in the middle so that they're at least safe. They're not going to get destroyed by the boulder throws. So that covers the healer placements as well, which I think is probably the trickiest part of this. Having healers, having them geared enough, having them strong enough that they can withstand the earth shakes is the main issue. And ideally having a 3rd hero that you can chuck down, either as a supplementary healer or as a DPS to help kill the waves faster, that will also function as a decoy to keep the Garnet guards from throwing boulders at your main 2 healers in the middle. So one thing you may have noticed is my Wrath was absolutely destroying his side, but my Isolde was having a lot of difficulty killing her side. So for that reason, I like to bring Iona or some other DPS so that I can handle the left side a bit better. I do like to take Iron just for the 10% stat bonus. It does help quite a bit, and there is periodic damage increases and healing multipliers, so I think he is a good option. I would go against using Wrath as a Lord for his bonus. I would not place him as the first hero, as his Lord bonus will reduce healing received, which is not really good for this stage. This stage is more focused on keeping everyone alive than it is killing enemies. So with this lineup, I would start with cost generation just because I like getting my heroes out sooner. As we have these enemies on the left and I want to reduce the amount of healing required, I will start with a Wrath first forward. I prefer to place fighters at the front just in case they do die, then I can place a defender behind them, which I think makes things a bit nicer. So we'll put down a Midan, as I think a tri-healer is just really nice. And now we need to make sure that Midan survives. So we'll go with a Lightlock facing up. So now we have 2 healers over here. And we have a Nisande if we want to support. I won't put Nisande at the front because that's a better position for Iona to be. So now the boss is spawning. Just before his Earthshake lands, we can despawn Narvi. So we'll see how this does. Lightlock is taking a beating, but he's just about keeping through it, mainly due to Midan's healing. If Lightlock or my second healer was having too much trouble and was not able to survive, then alternatively I could have placed down Isolde. It's not incredible, but her 10% damage reduction could make the difference. So this is the alternative on which you could do. You do need to place Isolde fairly quick so that her ultimate comes up sooner. But now it means when the Earth Tremors do hit, the Earthshakes hit, we can at least give everyone 10% damage reduction, which will help quite a bit. So we can ult just before it lands, we can despawn Narvi, and now there is a bit of damage reduction coming out in allies. I am not overly keen on doing this, mainly because now we have another target to heal because these guys are going to be damaging Isolde, and now they're still alive. So we have to deal with them now, which isn't ideal. However, I don't think it's a bad idea as you do get the damage reduction. It just depends how it's going for you in your run. We can then place down a DPS to handle them on the left side so Iona can focus on these guys. Mine is only 5-star and not in great gear, so she'll take a while to get through them, but Wrath should be strong enough to handle that side. Now we can see as the last placed hero, she's getting a lot of flack, she's taking a lot of hits, so we can place down a Nisande to support. And now Nisande will be getting attacked, she will be getting healed by my Midan. Lightlock should not be able to reach her, but that's okay. The main focus is the central area. If Nisande does happen to die, that is not the end of the world, it should be okay. You can see we took quite a bit of damage on Wrath there. The Garnet Guard's hitting him quite hard, so that is not ideal. Mine is strong enough, so perhaps you may have issue with that, but you have plenty of cost remaining, as you can see. So if you do have another defender, you could use them. For this, you do need to really chuck out your ultimates just to survive the Earthshakes, as this is where most of the damage is coming from. And yeah, this is the hardest part. Killing the waves in time to reduce the demand on your defender, and making sure you have enough healing to keep as many people up as you need to. So again, I would only place the healer on the left if they can contribute more than they drain, because at this point, all 3 of your healers should at least be able to keep themselves up, but ideally help other people as well. And once they're all in the positive, then you can really keep everyone alive. But I prefer to try to keep the least amount of heroes down as possible, so I wouldn't place a defender behind Wrath until Wrath died, for example, because otherwise it's just another person to heal. Everyone is going to be taking ambient damage from the sandstorm. So now we need to chew through these enemies. We can ult on Iona to try to get rid of the left side sooner, but it is not going especially fast. And now we've got through them, but we have this ground pound coming, so we do need to get some damage mitigations up. We do need some ultimates to heal people. We lost someone on the left, which is unfortunate, but we did keep our central column, which is the most important part, so that's okay. But now we have just the boss remaining. We can despawn Wrath as he's no longer leaded. The boss will come onto the left side. We have only 2 DPS at the moment, which is not great. We can slow with Mary to buy some time, so I do like Mary for this. This was suggested by Joshua Okoli in the other video, the GR2 guide video, so thank you for that, mate. And I think it does help. Just a little bit of slows, if you have spare tiles you're not using, can help quite a bit. His suggestion was to use Tariel as well, so that you can use the ult to damage the boss while he's traveling. So perhaps you would consider despawning Iona, putting Mary at the front to slow the boss longer, and then having Tariel blast the boss from further away. That would probably work fairly well. But from this point, it really is just a heal check and a DPS check. The sooner you kill the boss, the better. I don't have any good DPS up currently, so it is quite heavy. But eventually you get your DPS to spawn back from the right side, and now we have Wrath who can really chunk through the boss. So that's one strategy of placements. But you can see Wrath is doing most of the work. Of course he is, because he is 6-starred. I had the wrong Lightlock in that run, so forgive me, but you get the general placement idea. I have 2 Lightlocks built, so it's easy for me to get confused. So that's generally the placement strategies I would recommend. Iona is not the best for this, but I don't have many heroes built that I would recommend using, as they're mostly legendaries that I've been relying on in my save. You do really want to 6-star heroes for this. It will be worth it. When I was progressing, I had to 6-star Midan in order to pass this stage. And then shortly after that, I had to 6-star Vortex. And then shortly after that, I 6-starred my Regulus in order to progress. So you will not be able to clear these stages unless you are 6-starring your heroes. The stat difference is just too much. We've kind of discussed a bunch of the strategies around placement, facing heroes, healers, trying to survive the attacks using fighters. So I don't want to go too much more into the different compositions. It really just depends what heroes you have. I think the important thing to know next is really around your gearing. So this is how my Nisande was geared in the runs we just did. This is some of the older gear I had when I was still progressing. Basically, I just took anything to plus 16 that had a good main stat. That was how I progressed in the game. So you can see I've given her 2 attack percent mains that were plus 16. This has some nice HP subs, so that does help her survive. This one has some good attack subs to help her heal, attack speed as well, and some healing effect. But generally the focus at the time was just chuck 16 plus attack or plus HP percent depending on the healer and try to boost my core stats as much as possible. It's not ideal, but if you're struggling with the stages, the best thing you can do is just try to get hold of a few red pieces from stage 12 that are giving you good main stats. If it has good sub stats, fantastic, but generally you just need stats to get through this. So 6-star your core team, mainly your healers first, and give them plus 16 on their main stat gear. Do try to pick up healing effect if they are a healer as well, as it will benefit them quite a bit. If they are a HP scaling healer and they are dying, I would prioritize HP percent over healing effect more so. So for a healer that scales on HP like Vortex, I would channel HP bonus all the way just to make sure he can survive. You do want to pick up healing effect, and for that the salvation set on the left side is really good to help with that, but on the right side I would try to get as much HP bonus as possible, as you really want to keep him alive. The final thing I want to talk about in this video is troubleshooting problems. So I think something I've noticed a lot of people have trouble with is knowing exactly what is going wrong. So we'll take this team and I'll explain the things that are wrong with this team. So if you are unfortunate enough that you don't have AoE healers or massive range healers like Vortex or Midan, you can place your healers facing up across like this. That way they are both covering everyone, including each other, which is very important. And then you can place your DPS in the middle. However, this lineup is going to have its own problem, which is the focus of this clip. These healers are not good enough. So even with the ult from Isolde, we're just going to get killed at the moment. There's not enough healing coming out, and we lose the entire central column. So when that kind of thing happens, the solution is simply you need to gear up your healers more. You need to get them to 6-star. You need to plus 16 some gear on them. If they're still dying, you may need to swap one of the main stats for HP bonus just to keep them alive. So this time around we have a bunch of heroes down. We have 4 heroes down. We have a better healer this time, Vortex, instead of a very poor Lightlock. And we'll see how we get on, and we can see what the actual issue is with this run. So we ult here with Isolde. We can ult again with Nisande. So we can throw out some better healing. We have a very strong Vortex, probably a bit too strong compared to what you'll have access to. But you can see we just about keep hold of the entire group. Now we can place our other defender down on the right side, and things are going okay. We can place our Lightlock as well facing across to take the heat off of our central healers. We don't really want Iona getting killed either. He is getting healed from Vortex, so he should be okay. We can ult on Iona, but you can quickly see what the problem is. We don't have enough DPS. So we have enough survivability. Our defenders are doing a good job. Our healers are doing a great job. Everyone is being kept alive, but we're being overrun. And now we need to heal all of these lanes at the same time while dealing with 6 enemies. 3 on each of our defenders. So we may be able to make it through because my Vortex is slightly overgeared for this, but we're not killing the enemies, and we're going to have more enemies coming up soon. So normally you wouldn't even make it that far. The damage on your defenders would be too much to make it through, but the issue here is we don't have enough damage. So to make up for it, we'll take 2 fighters instead. So now there will be a different issue with this run. We place down our Isolde as before. We get our cost up as before. We'll use our Vortex again. Though again, Midan would work fine, or if you have legendary healers. If you're just using Lightlock and Nisande, it is really hard. I don't think there's a good way forward like that. So now we have a decision. Either we place a healer, or we try to place a DPS to get rid of these enemies a bit faster. So I would prefer to just place a healer and tough it out for the time being. Because anyone you place down to deal DPS, you're going to need to try to keep alive. So now we can just try to survive these 2 enemies and just heal through it. And now that we have these enemies left, we can then place our Iona We can place our Lightlock going across. We can place our Livian here to defend. And now we're kind of back in the same situation. We don't have enough DPS, right? Lightlock is getting pounded, but he'll be okay. But now we can place Wrath on the left side. This is kind of an issue because now we have an additional hero to heal, which is no small feat. But he is going to help deal with these guys. So we can ult on Iona. We can put down our Deimos over here to help deal with this side. But now we have to deal with the Earthshakes. But we can despawn Wrath as he's dealt with his side. Deimos killed one of the ones on his side, but now he's taking damage and there's no healer. So we'll despawn him as well. But now we have to heal everyone else up. We do have 3 healers down, so it's not too bad. But Iona can at least deal with these 2 on the right side. So there we have it. We're able to just about deal with the enemies on the right side. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to cover. It's not a very easy thing to explain. It's just figuring out what's wrong with your run and how to fix it. Either you're not going to be healing enough, your tanks are not strong enough to withstand the punishment, or your DPS is not good enough to kill the enemies in a timely fashion. Those are the 3 main things that will be screwing you over, and you need to try to patch up that however you can, either by making your DPS 6-star, so if my Iona was 6-star, I wouldn't have an issue dealing with these waves, or if my healing isn't good enough, then I would 6-star my Nisande so that she could actually heal the waves properly, or if Isolde was dying even during this or during the Earthshakes. So for example, during this Earthshake, if my Isolde was dying to these 2 enemies and the Earthshake, I would consider 6-starring her. If my Nisande was dying, I would consider 6-starring her. Once you get to this point and you're trying to keep a whole bunch of allies alive, if they're a DPS you want to use in a run, ideally they should be 6-starred as well because they need to be dealing as much damage as possible. But first I would try to use a healer facing across to cover everyone rather than 6-starring as many people as possible. Trying to get 3 healers covering is a pretty good solution, and I do know some people use 4 healers as well. Additionally, you can try to just keep a fighter down in front and get through that way, but I think it is quite tricky to keep them alive. I can't really give you a full template way to do this without 6-starring the whole team and giving them some fairly good gear, and I think that defeats the point of the video. So what I really wanted to explain is the placement strategies, the heroes that you really do want to rely on, which is Vortex and Midan. They are just super good for progressing through Gear Raid 2, and some ways to get more damage out, such as using fighters and despawning them if you need to. If you're noticing that people are going to die from the Earthshakes, then drop someone you don't necessarily need at the time. For example, if I noticed a bunch of people were low and we were entering or in the middle of an Earthshake, I would despawn Wrath. That way he's not taking healing from everyone else, and it makes it way easier for the healers to keep themselves alive. If the healers or the tank were to die, then your run is pretty much over. So in this scenario right here, we've got to heal everything up. I don't want Wrath taking healing from everyone, so I'll just despawn Wrath and leave everyone else up. And now it's got to the point where it's going fairly well. We've killed the right side. I can now despawn the right because it is 16 out of 17, and we're back to 3 healers maintaining 5 people including themselves, and it's a bit safer. You can see I didn't place my Iron at all, and I didn't use Narvi much beyond the beginning. If you find that you're not using these 2 slots, these 2 heroes, and you're not using many heroes that need the Lord bonus from Iron, then you can swap them out and have Mary instead to slow the boss, perhaps despawning Nisande, dropping Mary at the front, or bringing in more DPS to help burst the boss down. Anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to go over for this video. I think the strategy should help a fair amount. Again, I'm not going to make a template, this is how you beat the mission team. It's not that simple, unfortunately. If I did, it would just be 6-starring a bunch of epic heroes and putting them in fairly decent gear. The heroes I would use would just be Vortex and Midan. If not Vortex and Midan, you really would want one of them, but if I can't use those, it would have to be a Hollow and a Nisande, as their ults can bounce, and probably using a 3rd healer like Lightlock as well, and just stacking 3 healers facing each other. But at that point I would really need them all to be 6-star just to survive the damage to get through, as they are attack scaling healers, so they're not quite as tanky as others. Anyway, that's it for the video. I hope it is helpful. If you do have any tips and tricks, or if there are things I've missed, then please do share it in the comments below, as I'm sure it will help someone out. Thank you guys very much for watching. Have a great day. Take care, and bye-bye.